I've always been someone who craves something real, something raw, a connection that cuts through the noise of a predictable life. My name is Audrey, and for years I chased that feeling, turning away from a neat little box of society tried to fit me into. I didn't want the picket fence or the 9-to-5 grind. I wanted something that burned, something that felt alive. And then I met Sila. It happened by chance, in the dim glow of an airport bar. I was nursing a whiskey, half lost in my thoughts, when she slid onto the stool next to me. She had this wild energy, dark hair spilling over her shoulders, a laugh that turned heads. We started talking, and it was like the world shrank down to just the two of us. Hours passed like minutes. By the time my flight was called, I had her number scrawled on a napkin and a feeling I couldn't shake. 9 months later, we were married. It was fast, reckless, and perfect. At least, that's what I thought. For 8 years, we built a life together. It wasn't always easy, but it was ours. Sila was my anchor, my fire. But then, something shifted. I started noticing little things at first. How she'd linger in front of the mirror longer. How her wardrobe changed from jeans and t-shirts to dresses I'd never seen before. She'd come home late, her excuses thin, her eyes darting away from mine. And then there was Grant Weller, her ex. He'd always been a shadow in her stories, but now he was showing up in her life again. Coffee dates, work stuff, she'd say. I'd ask, and she'd brush it off with a laugh, telling me I was overthinking it. But I wasn't blind. The breaking point came after a work party she went to without me. She'd insisted it was no big deal, just colleagues blowing off steam. But when she stumbled in at 2 a.m., her lipstick smudged, her perfume mixed with someone else's cologne, I knew. I stood there in our kitchen, watching her fumble with her heels, and I felt invisible, like I'd been fading from her world for months, maybe years. That night, I made a choice. I couldn't keep pretending. I grabbed a pen, scribbled a note. I'm done. I hope you find what you're looking for, and left it on the counter. Then I packed a bag and walked out into the dark, the door clicking shut behind me. I didn't look back. I drove until the city lights faded, ending up in a quiet little town hours away. It was the kind of place where people nodded at you on the street, where the air smelled like pine instead of exhaust. I rented a small house with creaky floors and a view of the mountains, and for the first time in years, I breathed. I spent my days alone, walking trails, reading books I'd forgotten I loved, letting the silence settle into my bones. I wasn't running from Tila. I was finding myself again. Back home, Tila came back to an empty house. I can picture it. Her keys hitting the counter, her eyes landing on that note. She must have stood there, rereading it, the weight of what she'd done sinking in. I didn't call, didn't text. I let her sit with it, and she did. Days turned into weeks, and then I got word through a mutual friend. She'd been asking about me, trying to piece together where I'd gone. I didn't owe her an explanation. It wasn't long before the truth came spilling out. A friend forwarded me screenshots, messages between Tila and Grant. Flirty at first, then undeniable. There were photos, too, one she'd never meant for me to see. Her arm around his waist, his lips on her cheek. It was proof of what I'd felt in my gut all along. She'd been living a double life, and I'd been the fool holding up the facade. But instead of rage, I felt nothing. Not anymore. I'd already let her go. I kept my distance, stayed quiet. I didn't need to scream or fight. I just needed to be free. Sila could wrestle with the emptiness I'd left behind. I was done carrying it for her. Meanwhile, I started building something new. I got a job at a local hardware store. Simple work that kept my hands busy and my mind clear. I made a routine, coffee on the porch at sunrise, hikes in the afternoon, dinners I cooked for myself. Slowly I met people, a guy who fixed cars, a woman who ran the bookstore. They weren't replacements for what I'd lost. They were part of something better, something mine. Months later, my phone buzzed with a message from Tila. It was short, careful. I get it now. I'm sorry. I stared at it for a long time, my thumb hovering over the screen. I could have typed a dozen things, anger, forgiveness, questions. But I didn't. I set the phone down and walked outside, the cool evening air brushing my face. I didn't need to answer her. That chapter was closed. Now, I wake up to birds instead of traffic. I know the trails around my house like the back of my hand. I got a shelf full of books I've actually read, a couple friends I call if I needed them. It's not the wild, burning connection I chased all those years ago. It's quieter, steadier, and it's enough. I've found peace, not in someone else, but in me. After everything, that's what matters most.